Hello everyone, I'm Carl here at Carl Says Guitar Tuition, and I'm excited today to be here talking about another amazing album that changed my life, that impacted my life, and chances are if you clicked on this video it did exactly the same thing for you as well, and that is the 2003 release of the self-titled album by Blink-182, 182, I don't know, the great debate, whatever you pronounce for that band, whatever you say at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, it's all good. But this album, I truly believe, and obviously the title of this video, the premise of this video is that it changed pop punk forever. So I'm going to go into some of the reasons that I believe and that I think that this is the case. I'm always interested and intrigued to know what you think, what you feel, and also how this album impacted your life and changed your life in the ways that it maybe did for me as well. So let's jump straight into it. So of course, leading up to the release of this album and the previous albums that were, the previous two at the very least, leading up to this for the fame of Blink with Enema of the State and Take Off Your Pants and Jacket and Travis Barker joining the band and all these amazing things that really pushed the trajectory of the band forward into stardom, into the limelight, into TMZ and MTV, and here in the UK, Kerrang, etc. They were really just prime pop punk albums, yeah? They were just, what if you put on one of those albums or one of those songs, you just hear it and you go, oh yeah, that's what I expect pop punk to be, that's what I expect the sound to be, at least in modern times, in like the late 90s, early 2000s at the very least anyway. Some people might have a different perspective of what they think and feel pop punk is or should be, or all that sort of stuff. But if you grew up in this era like I did and you're exposed to these bands and this music like I did, you see Blink-182 as sort of the top of the totem pole of pop punk bands, okay? So yeah, those two albums, very pristine, very clean, very well produced, mixed, mastered, recorded, very tight, although Blink aren't famously, or weren't at least famously tight live. Interesting fact. But anyway, they just had this very anthemic sound to them, very big, very major sounding in terms of the music kind of theory department, very upbeat, very major, very epic, very anthemic. The lyrics were all angsty teen lyrics when you really break them all down, whether it's to do with breakups or angst against parents and all these kind of stereotypical type of subjects in the early 2000s that made pop punk known for what it is, especially in America, more so than maybe in the UK, but obviously it kind of transcended over either way. And that leading up to the release of this self-titled album by Blink-182 and how vastly different that was and the variety that it offered in terms of every song kind of felt a little bit different or offered something a little bit different sonically, lyrically, whatever it may be. It was a lot darker in theme, a lot more emo, a lot more emotional, a lot more heartfelt. And I mean, I was really young at the time, so I don't specifically remember these sorts of impacts or feelings. I just remember the impact that the music had on me in general. But I can only imagine the shock at the time of going from those previous two albums or all of the discography of Blink leading up to that point, really, and then landing on this album and it coming out and everyone being like, whoa, what the hell, like I wasn't anticipating this, I wasn't expecting this, whatever the case may be. And I just find that alone really interesting, because one of the first reasons I wanted to get into here for this album changing pop punk forever is the fact that it took chances, the fact that it was so uniquely different, the fact that it was 100% unapologetically itself in terms of what Mark, Tom, and Travis kind of set out to achieve and set out to do. And there's just no apologies in this album. The way it sounds, it's way more kind of raw in a lot of ways. It's still very heavily produced, that's for sure. Very expensive album that was made, but it just feels a bit more raw, feels a bit more authentic, feels a bit more like guys in a room jamming for a lot of it. And the lyrics obviously dive into just different topics, and they definitely challenge themselves in every direction, sonically, lyrically, songwriting wise, etc. And I think that this really helped the kind of scene of pop punk at the time, because I think maybe it was stuck in a rut of feeling like it had to always be anthemic or major or upbeat or angsty or whatever. Don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of angst in this album, that's for sure, but just in a different way. But yeah, I feel like it changed the trajectory of pop punk because it went, oh no, it's okay to sound a little bit different every so often. It's okay to use different instrumentation. It's okay to write songs a little bit differently, to write lyrics a little bit differently, and kind of step out of the norm of what Sum 41 and Green Day and Good Charlotte and sort of all these bands of that time were probably focusing on and doing for the most part, maybe a little bit except Sum 41, but that's a different topic. And I find that really, really interesting. Obviously, this was very evident later down the line when Tom went off to do Angels and Airwaves and kind of pushing the boundaries sonically and lyrically in that way, and a lot more darker and deeper and heartfelt and meaningful. This was definitely the infancy of that, and you can definitely hear it and you can definitely see it when you do go back and listen to this album. I just really think this album pushed things forward for bands and for music in the pop punk world as far as that's concerned. So I have the track listing up on my phone here because I can't remember it off by heart right now. I just wanted to kind of pinpoint a few songs that I feel like really changed pop punk forever for all of the reasons that I've kind of just mentioned, really. So a first one, especially for Blink, is Obvious. Just much darker, much heavier in tone and in sound, down-tuned guitars, all of these sorts of things that weren't super normal or super accepted within this whole pop punk kind of world at the time. I Miss You, of course, more ballady, more sort of The Cure inspired. You've got the double bass in there. Again, you've got them kind of emo, gothic kind of vibes and feels that were very, very out of the norm at the time as well. A lot of these songs, to be fair, I'm just going to pinpoint a couple of them, but like even the interludes, the Stockholm Syndrome interlude and Falling interlude, like not many bands were doing weird, interesting, unique, kind of electronic-y, different sounding interludes or songs in general within the pop punk world at the time, that's for sure. And I feel like Blink were really ahead of the curve as far as that's concerned, most likely probably thanks to Travis Barker, looking back on that, to be completely honest. Of course, he had All of This with Robert Smith of The Cure, very different sounding song, acoustic-y, ballady, but also still kind of not this weird kind of inspired by The Cure situation. And then obviously you also had songs like Asthena, which is one of my favorites of all time, which very much leans into that kind of future Angels and Airwaves sound that would have came back around once Blink did go on hiatus and Tom did go to explore that side of music a little bit. But that's just to name a few. Violence even, like the lyrics and Violence are really, really clever, I feel like, really well written, really kind of introspective and things like this. And just the fact that like the image of the band changed at the time, the artwork was very simple, straightforward and plain. The image of the band changed, the sound of the band changed. It was a complete 360 to what I'd done previously, as I've just mentioned. They were doing, ultimately, long story short, they were just doing something very new and very different at the time, at very least. Not now. It's very normal now for bands to do these different things, especially within the pop punk world. You've got the sad pop punk bands, you've got the happy pop punk bands, you've got everything sort of in between sonically and lyrically. But at the time, I feel like a lot of it was, like I keep saying, more upbeat, more anthemic, more angsty, and all of those kind of top 4 or 5 bands on TMZ and MTV and things like that were all kind of embodying that and focusing on that and doing that for the most part. Blink took a chance, they took an opportunity to do something new, to do something different, to test the waters, to push themselves forward. And I think for that reason, it sort of influenced and inspired all of the bands of the time and all of the bands to follow into my era of playing music and pop punk and things like that, to not be afraid to do different things, to try different things, and to not be stuck in a box at all times either. If you want to do something heavy, do something heavy. If you want to do something upbeat, do something upbeat. And I'll embody that myself within my band Connection State too. So it's definitely impacted me. It's definitely helped me in my life and in my musical journey, that's for sure. But what do you think? What do you feel? What do you remember about this album? Did it impact you? Did it help you through some tough times? What nostalgic sort of memories and things like that do you feel and have when you think about this album and look back on this album? I'd love to talk about it. I'd love to hear about it. But otherwise, once again, thank you very much for watching and listening and just paying attention to my rambles on this video. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.